Hey everyone, it's Tara Palaki here, kinesiologist and yin yoga teacher. So I help women to unlock the keys that help them listen to their body, to help them make a positive difference to what they do each day. And this is because we can suffer in so many ways as women, more because we've forgotten how to unlock these skills of how to listen to ourselves. You know, in fact, we've at times been actively conditioned against listening to ourselves and our bodies. And this is why I'm presenting this Honor Your Body series, because this is going to be bringing to your door a series of people who are really going to enable you to listen to your bodies, but in really positive ways. So today we are joined for one of the juiciest chats that we are going to be taking a deeper dive into honor your body within your relationships. So this is where we start to get really curious and ask, which relationship do you need to reclaim your power, self-worth, or boundaries, or maybe all of them? Is this with relationships with your partner, your friends, your family, your colleagues, maybe even with yourself? And today I'm joined by the amazing Clare Spink, who is the founder of Feminine Empowerment Therapy. So join us as we get real and authentic about relationships in our life and where we may have lost ourselves or our sense of self. Perhaps shedding some insights as to why it can happen and what nuggets of golden wisdom we can share to get you thinking of ways how you can shift some of those patterns. Here are just a few of some of the topics we're going to cover for you today: womb connection and healing, womb wisdom, ancestral healing, listening to our bodies, and lots more. I told you it was going to be a juicy chat. And so without further ado, let's dive right in. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, Clare. It's so beautiful for you to be joining us in, like I say, the most juiciest of conversations. And I must admit, like, this word feels so right for you and the work that you do. And I'm sure as we go further into this evening, that's going to become really apparent. But for those of you who maybe haven't met you yet, I would love for you to share who you are and what it is that you do.
Thank you, Tara. It's an absolute honour to be here. And I love the fact that you connect the word juicy with me. That's a good word to have. So for those of you that don't know me, I am the creatrix of womb and fertility massage, first of all. And I created that back in, I think, 2006. And I've been teaching that for the last 8 years. And then in the last year or so, the empowered feminine, so the female empowerment, the female empowerment therapy has started to rise up, and I'll explain a little bit more about that as we go on through the evening. But yeah, so my passion is all about the womb, about getting women to connect into their womb, to heal their womb. I coined the phrase "heal the womb, heal the woman," because when you do the work and you really get juicy and dive in and you heal your womb, you rise up, and I think that's where the word juicy comes for me, because you know, your juicy, your creativity, your visions, your vitality for life comes from within your womb space. So yeah, so that's who I am in a nutshell.
Gorgeous. Absolutely. And you know, this is where, I mean, I think I met you 2015, where I did my womb massage practitioners training with you. And I've also been blessed to receive the massages from you as well. And that, you know, it is that juiciness, it is going into the womb. But one of the gifts, many gifts that you have, that you offer women, is that deeper connection and that holding the space for them to really connect in with their heart, with their womb, and to really then open it up. And I love that you call yourself a creatrix, because that's such a powerful word, I believe. And that's the gift that you are bringing to so many women, the healing of themselves, to really be in their creatrix power. And like you say, to heal the womb is to heal the woman, is just gorgeous. And I've witnessed your gifts firsthand, and I've witnessed them in my own body, my own womb. And I've also witnessed them with other women as they've journeyed with you, deep diving into practitioner training and watching women shift into the space where they grow, they become enlivened. There's such a lightness and a releasing and shedding of a lot of the heaviness as they then become that lighter, freer part of themselves, and that deeper connection, so that they are then feeling more empowered to be able to show up as themselves. And what a truly, truly beautiful gift to be holding women. So coming back into relationships, I mean, we've already spoken about that relationship. We'll start to touch relationship with the womb. To heal the womb is to heal the woman. But in your opinion, in your belief, what do you believe is often the most overlooked thing about relationships and the relationships that we have in our life?
I think the key thing is the disconnection to ourself, and whether that is disconnection to yourself when we're in relationships with anyone externally, or with our own selves, with our own body parts. It's such a huge topic, and it's just knowing really where to start. But I think that the key thing is looking at when we're disconnected from our womb, which is the core essence of who we are as women. It's the center of us. It sits in our core for a reason. And when we're disconnected from our womb, we are not living in tune with ourselves. If we go to the really simple basics of the fact that we have a menstrual cycle, and our menstrual cycle has 4 different phases, and we cycle through those phases, and each phase gives us different aspects of how we can live our life. We'll just briefly go through this. We have our pre-ovulation, which is our spring energy. It's our real nymph energy. It's that vibrancy. It kind of relates to our first years after we've got our first bleed and through our early 20s. And it's that real vibrant energy. And it's when we are super creative, all the ideas are buzzing around, we've got lots of energy, we're really sociable. Then we've got the next phase, which is ovulation, and that's our creatrix energy, our mothering energy. And the energy kind of slows down slightly to focus. We've still got a lot of energy, but we're more focused. And it's when we are obviously most fertile. And it's when the ideas that we have go outwards into life. And it's when Mother Nature, many years ago, because they didn't have the OPK sticks, Mother Nature gave us mucus so that we knew that we were fertile. And that was when, and we gave off different pheromones, so men would be more attracted to us. And obviously it's when we conceive babies. And then we have our premenstrual phase, which is our autumn phase, our warrior phase. It's that editing and that critic, and it's a part of the cycle that most people really struggle with, and particularly our partners, our men. They can really struggle with it because they're like, it's the shadowy part of us, and we're more irritable. We speak our truth more, but that's there for a reason. And it has to be so, because we need to recognize what comes up for us in that part of the cycle for us to realize what's not working, who's not working, so that we can clear those people from our life, or maybe reshuffle how we work with them in our life. And then we have our menstruation, our winter phase, our wisdom keeper. And that's a part of that cycle when we need to slow down and to rest. And it's a time when we're not feeling very sociable. And that's the time when our dreams are at their highest. And in the olden days, when we didn't have all the lights around and the EMF, and men honoured our cycles, we all went into a red tent, because we all used to bleed with the dark moon, and all women would, they'd bleed together, and men honoured it because they knew that was our real, it's called the wisdom keeper for a reason. It was our wise time, because our dreams would come to us and it would give us guidance. Now, when we're not living in tune with our cycles because we're either not slowing down and paying attention, or we're on the contraceptive pill or any hormone replacements or the coil, and we're trying to live in like a linear fashion, then we're disconnected. We're disconnected from that wisdom that can guide us each month as to what is and isn't working on a really simple basis. And that's when, you know, certainly bringing it back to a relationship, I will, and I do share, I always share with my students my own personal story, that my relationship when I was married wasn't happy for quite a long time. So my cycles were coming around quicker and quicker. And it meant that my autumn, so my, you know, my premenstrual phase was ramped up, and it was like a volcano, and I probably was like a real fierce warrior. And it was coming around quicker and quicker because I wasn't listening to what wasn't working in my own life. And so I do believe that my womb was giving me this kick every 21 to 23 days going, hey, you can listen? Are you going to listen? And eventually I did have to listen. And then I used my cycle in order to tell my husband that I wanted to divorce. So again, this is how you can use your cycle for yourself. I told him the first time around in my spring, which is your lovely, you know, you love everybody and you're nicer and you say it with, you know, kindness. And I spent an hour and a half telling him why I wanted to divorce. But unfortunately, you're also in your vulnerable phase, you're like a teenager, and he talked me around. So the next time I did it, I was in my autumn, and it took me 8 minutes, and I had my shoes on, I'd packed my bags, and, you know, boom. Because actually that's how you can use your cycle, is if you want someone to stay in your life, do it in your spring. But if you don't, do it in your autumn. And that's how, you know, you do use your menstrual cycle and your womb wisdom for your relationships. But it's a good chance as well. You know, you've got friends, you know, you go for a coffee with a friend and you can see them in your pre-ovulation and they could be talking about themselves. And you're like, yeah, you know, you can put up with it. 2 weeks later, you see them and you're in your premenstrual and your head's blowing and you can't wait to get out of there. And they feel so vampire energy. And, you know, you get home and you're rah, 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 about your friend. Well, okay, look at what's happening there. Why is it they're triggering you? What is it going on for you? And if you want to keep this friend, take it into your bleed. Take some time to slow down, to rest, to journal, to think about, how can I best speak to this friend? How do I want them in my life? Do I want to see them every week without fail? Do I want to have that pressure on me? Or do I need to step back? Figure out what it is that you need. Be authentic with your own needs. Create your boundaries. And then in the springtime, your pre-ovulation or your summer, you can meet up with your friend and you share with them how you would like that relationship to continue. If they don't honour this, do it in your autumn because they're not worth it as a friend. Let's cut it down. But the same with your work. You know, the amount of people that I've spoken to that kind of get that sense of, I just want to run away, I don't want to do this job anymore. And then you kind of go, oh, where are you in your cycle? Yeah, they're in their autumn. So I think that is the most key thing for me, really, to when I share with my clients and the practitioners, is get to know your cycle. Get to know it from a really young age if you can. You know, if you've got daughters, share it with them so that they can make really good choices. Because when we're on the pill, we are not in tune with our cycle, and we live and we make choices that are not the right choices for us.
Just letting that filter through, because there is so much within that, and I know it stuck with me. You gifted the sentence "bleed on it," and that was during the training, and it stuck with me, and I pass it to all women who we go on this journey with, because like you say, that connection, when you start to listen with the cycle, you're getting parts of your life illuminated. The relationships around you are being illuminated constantly in various different ways for those that are working, and perhaps where there may be some attention needed. And that that autumn phase, that bit coming in before you bleed, there's a lot going on, and we can experience those irritations. And then, like you said about bleeding on it, taking any of those irritations, that like, oh, into your bleed. And that statement of bleed on it has really, really just, it's in my mind, it's never going to leave. Because then you went on to say that if it's still important and needs your attention, then even after you've used all your energy to bleed, you've come into that meditative, that restful state, then when you re-emerge and your energy is coming back into that place of where you are, in effect, reconnecting, coming, I always think of it as like coming into a cave and then re-emerging from the cave. Yeah. Then it will still be significant. It will still be something that you feel that you want to take action on. If, however, it was just the sort of tension side, and you bled on it and it was released and it was gone, then actually it was perhaps just more symptomatic of where you were in your cycle. And that ability to be able to sift, because our PMT time can be really challenging for many women, this time before they bleed, but that is a tool to be able to sift through what may be just tension and what may be the stuff that actually we do need to give our attention and our energy and our focus to, and honor what came up as those messages, is such a powerful way to know what's real and what to put our focus on, whether it be work, whether it be friends, whether it be partners. And yeah, that's one of the biggest gifts, many that you've given me, but one of the biggest gifts that you've ever given me is that in that time I can go, I'm just going to keep a note of this. We are not looking away. I'm going to honor all of this. I'm going to bleed on it. I'm not going to take action right now, because actually I'm also probably not going to address it in the way that feels like it would be kind or feels like I'm open to listen. And so by bleeding on it, yeah, it's been such a gift. Thank you for that. And actually I'm just so present to this idea as to how that acts as this like sat nav system, this guidance system through our relationships, every relationship that we have in our life. It's so key. You've mentioned about being on the pill. I'm just curious, obviously you mentioned about that changes our cycles. What wisdom can women be still hooking into if they are on the pill? How could they still have access to some of this wisdom? Or perhaps women who are perimenopausal or menopausal, so their cycles aren't necessarily the same as being led by their hormones, but is there something else that women could use to still activate some level of wisdom?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, we can bring it back into the moon. So I can't believe I actually forgot to mention the moon in the last bit, but yeah, we can bring the wisdom into the moon. So the same as we have with the menstruation, that will be the dark moon, and the ovulation is around the full moon. So you can connect into the moon energy. I think another thing that is really worth doing, and whether you're you know, on the pill, perimenopause, or whether you actually have cycles, is really tuning in and slowing down enough to feel in your body. And a lot of the time people don't really know what I'm talking about when I say, you know, how does that feel in your body? And they're like, I don't know. They kind of give me that real shrug, and they don't really know. So I'm going to give a really simple example that people can do so that you can feel straight away whether something feels good for you or doesn't feel good for you. And that's if you were to close your eyes and imagine that someone that you like has walked into the room and they're standing 10 meters away from you. Feel how your body feels. And then imagine they've walked 5 meters and they're standing 5 meters in front of you. Now, how does that make your body feel? And now this person that you really like is sitting right in front of you. They may be holding your hand, they may be touching you, they may be hugging you. How does that feel? And now repeat that same experience with someone that you do not like. So that person has now walked in and they're 10 meters away from you. Now feel how you may turn your body. You may feel that you're hardening up, you're closing yourself. You may feel tension as they start walking closer and closer. Where does that tension hold in your body? Are you able to breathe the same that you were a couple of moments ago? Can you feel that maybe you've clenched yourself? Now that person's standing right in front of you and they're reaching out to touch you. How does that feel in your body? And that really simple exercise is a way of trying to go through anything that, so, you know, in our premenstrual, we can get that discernment, but we can use this exercise as well for, does this feel right in my body or does it not feel right in my body? When something feels right as well, you may get goosebumps. You may get that tingle of, oh yeah. But if something doesn't feel right, you may get like a real sickness in your stomach. You may get physical ailments like headaches or you know, ear or throat. Throat is a massive one. If you start getting the sore throat around someone or you start coughing a lot, is that somebody that doesn't allow you to express yourself? Does that somebody that makes you kind of feel quite strangulated, like, you know, they're suffocating you? Or is it that you're trying to get something out, but you're fearful of saying something or that, you know, won't be received well? So there's some really simple ways of listening in to your body. And we know, people say all the time, oh, I went into this house, and and you get that sensation straight away that, oh my gosh, that, you know, I didn't like that house. Or you get a feeling, you know, you can step into the company of somebody else that you've never ever met. Children and animals are amazing at this. I use my daughter and my dog as a great guide, because they will tell me if someone's not nice. Because they won't go near them. And I think actually, I don't know unless you wanted to drop in, I was just going to go on to another area, but around that kind of about children, and children knowing what does and doesn't feel right for them. And we've probably all experienced it when we're little. You know, you go and visit some sweaty old uncle that you have to go and give a cuddle to, or give them a kiss goodbye, or whatever it is, and your parents are making you do it.
Yeah.
And every cell in your body's going, oh, I don't want to. Now, we learn at the age of 18 months, our first word, other than mama and dada, our first word is no. Society says 18 months to 2 years old is when we become the terrible twos, because we say no a lot. Now, that's when our two survival key points in our life is attachment and authenticity. Now, when we say no, we're being authentic to ourselves.
Yes.
That might be that, no, I don't want to put my shoes on. No, I do not want to eat that banana. No, I don't want to do this. No, I don't want to hug great Uncle Harry. But what happens is our parents, and often, you know, as parents, there's certain things where we do know best when it comes to safety. But there are other points when we have to really honour that these little people in our lives, they know what feels right for them, because they have got this innate ability to know what feels right. And when we start saying to them, no, you must do this, and you put them in the corner, or you put them on the naughty step, dear old super nanny, for bringing that crap aspect in of, you know, putting a child in another room and not listening to them when they're crying, because all that teaches your child is, in order for them to feel that they are being heard, they have to do what we say. And in order for them to feel attached to their parent, they can't be authentic in saying no, because we turn our eyes away from them, or we look away, we get disgusted with them, we put them in another room. They've lost that attachment. When they are put in another room, they're lost that attachment. So they start to lose the ability to be authentic and listen to self, because their desire for attachment is going to be stronger than their desire for authenticity. Because actually, if you go back to caveman times, they kind of needed to be safe and have the attachment so they didn't get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. So that was more important than them saying no. That's kind of where, you know, if we go back to the, you know, the first phase of where it started. But that's when we start to learn that if we're authentic, we can lose our attachment. I'll stop for a moment and let that land.
And that's something to really feel like contemplate on as well, that wisdom as to how often children are listened to, the conditioning that we have around compliance, good behavior, and what's good and bad. And do not get me wrong, I can imagine that it's a really difficult balancing act with so many things as a parent that you are holding with that. But just thinking in terms of perhaps my experiences and many other people's experiences of feeling that they are safe to express themselves. You know, I'm sure you found this when you are working with your client, with your women, how difficult they can find it to express themselves. There's a lot of fear around saying how they feel, of rocking the boat, of expressing something that they fear that the other person wouldn't like, of potentially being rejected around that. Like it's a really big thing. So yeah, this feels again another really juicy thing to sit and feel into, and to allow it to be in the body. Like, how does that feel within the body? Does there feel like something that is resonating? Because that's yeah, I can feel that deep within my being. So thank you for sharing that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
And so we've touched on cycles. Well, we've spoken about the beautiful wisdom in cycles, spoken about the ability to be able to slow down and to let others come into your mind and your energy, and start to really tune into how they feel. And then speaking about also then childhood, and you know, how we were, what freedom we were given to be able to say no versus what times then that was closed down, us finding our voice. One of the other things that you've mentioned here is about ancestral healing and the role that our ancestry can play in how we show up in our lives and our relationships, most importantly. Would you like to share a little bit more about how our ancestry can impact our relationships?
This is where we get really juicy. This is one of my favourite topics. So we're going to start a little bit with the science, so that there is some scientific knowledge behind what I'm talking about. I've studied with Mark Rowland, and I'm also doing some work with Gabor Mate. So there is some really good people behind me teaching me right now. So the science is that they took a load of male mice, they gave them cherry blossom to smell, and at that same time of giving them cherry blossom, they shock therapied them. And they could tell from their cellular structures within that they went into fear. They then got those male mice to impregnate female mice. The pups that formed, when they smelt cherry blossom, their bodies went into fear without being shocked. And then when they had babies or pups, they also went into fear with the smell of cherry blossom. So it shows that for 3 generations minimum, the traumatic experience that happens, and it affects the mRNA structure, cellular structure within, feeds through the female and the male line. Okay, so that goes through. They also did some scientific studies where they took female mice and they had their pups. They took the female mice away from the pups. And these poor pups obviously went into fear because they haven't got that attachment with their mum. Now, they then went to 3 generations where they didn't do that experiment again, but that break in the attachment, in how it shows up in our cellular structures, was playing out, and also in their behaviours, was playing out for 3 generations. So if we think, and we have like the same, I think it's 80 to 90% of our DNA is the same as mice. So this is how they do it on mice. And it's a lot quicker to do the experiments rather than humans, where we'd have to wait couple of hundred years to get that many generations. So if we now think about the fact that we have these 4 unconscious themes that run through every single person, and this is mainly to do with, start off with our mothers and our fathers, more so with our mum, because if we go with the Rudolf Steiner belief, he says that we're in our mother's energy from 0 to 7, Then from 7 to 14, we allow our father's energy in. And from 14 to 21, we allow external people in. So there's that theory as well to bring into play with this. But our attachment to our mother, first and foremost, because we start life inside our mother's womb, and our mother is our universe. Mm-hmm. We then come out of our mother's womb, and she continues to be our life force. Mm-hmm. So how our relationship is with our mother is so utterly, utterly important for how we are and how we go on in life. So if there is a break in the bond, which is any break in attachment, and I'll go through this a little bit more in a moment because this is the most important one, we can identify with somebody else in the family. So if there's a big trauma in our ancestral patterns, we can identify with that person and start taking on their beliefs, their patterns, and illnesses and ways that we act and our behaviour and things. But it means that we can do things that are so out of character for us, and it might not kick in until a certain age, but that could be the age that it happened to somebody in our ancestral line. We have rejection and merging. So we can reject a parent. Now, whatever it is that we reject in the parent, if we haven't healed it, we're likely to find it in a partner that we bring in, or whatever it is we reject in our parent will be the characteristics that we unfortunately have in ourselves. And then we have this merging, and we can merge with a parent where we become either their caregiver. Now, if we become their caregiver, a parent is supposed to parent you, but a lot of the time you see it that people feel this need, they have to look after their mum or they have to look after their dad, and they become overgivers. So we become quite empathic. A lot of us who are empaths, it tends to be somewhere in our patterning behind. But those that are over in the giving can often end up with things like chronic fatigue or a lot of the autoimmune diseases, or particularly the ones that fatigue you more. You can also merge, so you can literally repeat the same pattern. So if your father had affairs all of his life, you will either merge with your father and you'll be the one to have affairs, or you'll have a partner that will have affairs. But let's go back to this breaking the bond, because attachment, I mentioned attachment earlier as being the key thing, and it really is. So if we go back a couple of generations from people in, of our generation, us that are in our kind of 30s and 40s, not giving my age away completely, I was 28.
I'm with you, my love. I'm with you.
Stuck at 28. But our grandparents, in the wartime, what happened to a lot of our grandparents or our parents or our great-grandparents? They got evacuated. They got sent away from their parents. That is a huge break in the bond. So anything really that happens in the ages of 0 to 10 has a massive, massive impact. So that is a big one that a lot of us will experience. So even if we haven't got a break in the bond with our own mother or our own father, we still have, and a break in the bond shows up in a lot of ways. But one of the ways is that real lack of self-worth, lack of not knowing where we belong in the world. I'm going to come to a few of the other breaking the bonds, but when we have that breaking the bond, say our parents didn't attend to us when we were crying. There was an old school way of put them in a pram and stick them down the garden, or controlled crying. All that teaches you, if it doesn't teach you to self-soothe, I know a lot of people seem to think it does, but it does not teach you to self-soothe. It teaches you that no one's coming to you, no one's listening to you. So you haven't got the ability to self-regulate because your needs are not being met. You've got the ability now to kind of go, shut down, suppress my feelings, not showing my feelings, not honouring who I am. I'm just going to zip it and be quiet. That whole saying, wasn't it, that was around in the wartime of children are to be seen and not heard. Yeah, those kind of things are really, they're prevalent in why we have so many completely disconnected people emotionally unavailable, emotionally disconnected, because they're the patterns that we've had through our ancestors. And so you can have a break in the bond in the fact that, say your mother was pregnant and she lost the baby before you. So now she's pregnant with you. unfortunately, she's not going to be as attuned to you, as connected to you, because there is going to be fear running through her, that fear of, am I going to lose you? Or she could be grieving, depending on how far she went in that pregnancy. So she's not connected to you. So straight away in the mother's womb, you've got a break in the bond. You're born, you've got a cord wrapped around your neck, you're blue, you've got to go in an incubator. There's a break in the bond. Now, this doesn't mean, so say that happens, you're an incubator baby. That doesn't mean the breaking the bond's there forever. Because if you've got a mum who now attachment parents you, you know, she hugs you a lot, she reassures you, she cuddles you, she listens to you, that breaking the bond is going to be pretty much null and void, because she's reattached, she's bridged that attachment to you. But this is where, you know, kind of bringing it back into, I guess, our relationships is, from a breaking the bond point of view, you have so many people who, you know, as in relationships, they don't connect, they don't talk. They literally survive. I don't know how they survive, because they're not living the fullest and juiciest lives, but they're just so disconnected. And I think that's how they survive, is they're both on a disconnected level. And then I think what happens when you've got one person who's fully connected to their emotions and another who's disconnected, you're not going to, they're not going to be able to stay together unless this person here does the work. So I mean, that's quite a huge aspect, really, because I've only given you a few examples of how we've got breaks in the bond. But again, within relationships, any ancestral trauma that gets passed down, so the general rule is that the firstborn daughter will take on the mother's lineage, the firstborn son takes on the father's lineage. So if you're the second daughter, you'll take on the father's. If you're the second son, you take on the mother's. Now, if there's a huge trauma in the grandparents or the great-grandparents, that will feed down to pretty much most of the children, like the grandchildren, because anything that's unresolved doesn't stay unresolved. It comes up and will make itself known, and it will affect every child or every grandchild. It will affect them differently. And so really basically, I'll share a very simple story, but I was in a fairly abusive relationship. I then went into another even worse relationship, and then 2 months later, after 18 years, my brother admitted to me that he'd been in an incredibly abusive relationship, which we rescued him from. And I was like, hang on a minute, why have both of us, when, you know, that's not my parents' stuff? And then I looked at all my cousins on my female maternal side. And, you know, there's, you know, I need to be careful because, you know, some of them may watch this video. But there are patterns that I've seen. In a lot of them, there's, you know, controlling aspects, if not abuse. And I looked into my history a lot more to really kind of start digging, which is what really started me on this path of really wanting to look into the ancestral trauma. Now, my grandmother, when she was 12, she was abused very badly, and she was sent away to a borstal, and she gave birth at the age of 12.
Wow.
And then coming out of that, my grandmother turned into the abuser. So which is normal, you know, hurt people. It's what happens unless you do the work and you heal. But in that generation, that time, they didn't have people to really help. And unfortunately, my grandmother lived this life where she really abused my grandfather, who was this soft and gentle man. And it all started falling into place that my brother had literally identified with my grandfather, and he'd become the man that had been abused. And this abuse kind of ran through all of us, but all of us have grown up and seen this abuse and just thought it was normal because that's what Nan and Granddad did. And fortunately, although I didn't know the work to the level that I know it now, before my grandmother died, and I sat with her for days and days in the weeks leading up to her death, I released, and I did a lot of work with her about releasing the shame, because her story, that when she was raped at 12, that story had been so unspoken that it couldn't be healed. So I sat with her and I did it. And I still have the written letter that I wrote the day that she died that went into her coffin with her, because I recognised that everyone had this opinion of my grandmother, that wasn't a nice opinion, but realizing that she was the way she was. And I share this because anybody who's listening, who's got a mother that's an alcoholic or a father that's a narcissist or whatever the story is, rather than being angry at your mother or your father because of what they are and who they are and how they've treated you, step and look behind them, because there's a story behind them that has caused them to be the way they are. And it's having that forgiveness, not forgiveness, but acceptance of their story and handing back their story so that you can release yourself from that entanglement. And I think that's a really important thing, because when you're going to have relationships, if you're struggling certainly in one-to-one relationships with partners, take a little look back, get a therapist to help you, or take a look back through your ancestral line, because maybe you've entangled yourself unknowingly, obviously unconsciously, you have entangled in a pattern that isn't yours to keep moving forwards with, and you need to free yourself. And it's having compassion for the stories that your ancestors have held that aren't yours to carry anymore.
Yeah. And compassion is such a powerful word. I can really hear the embodiment of compassion that's needed into perhaps more of these challenging relationships that we have. Again, touching on this, having explored some of the powerful work about looking behind the person that's in front of you as such, and witnessing the power of that therapy of releasing the entanglement of the energy of other people's stories is so powerful. You know, that's work that we did, and witnessing that for myself in my own body, as well as then witnessing it on other people, was so powerful. And it does bring in, it makes space for some awareness, for some understanding and some compassion for ourselves, and then also the lineage that it's come through from. And that bringing compassion rather than perhaps that separation that can come in, that wanting to get distance from certain parts of ourselves, parts of our being, that judgment, that sort of criticism of self or others, and moving into that space of compassion, that's where healing can really start to come in. And, you know, this isn't a simple journey. This isn't a piff, paff, poof, poof. I look behind, oh, now I'm healed. Everybody is healed. Oh, sprinkle of compassion in the world is amazing once again. But it allows space for there to become some compassion, and depending upon the story and depending upon what the journey that needs to be there for that, for the person, for the people that are around them. But just even when a slither of compassion can start to come in, then that can start to create such shifts in stories and paradigms, and, like I say, bring in healing. And that disentangling, again, you know, that was such a prevalent word, wasn't it, during our training, the entanglement. And that's what this is. I feel like we treat ourselves so simply, that I am this being right now, you are your being right now, and that you are the only part of your being. But actually you've got DNA, but you've got memories coming in through you. You've got people that have been around you and their ideas and thoughts and beliefs. You know, we are complex beings. You are not just Claire, and nobody else has ever influenced your DNA or your thoughts or your energy or your conditioning. We're not that separate. We are all interconnected, and part of our journey, if we choose it, is to explore the things that perhaps still need healing within us, what's entangled and woven into us, that we can then heal, release, and potentially create these shifts in our lives. Our lives and our relationships.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, my love, I feel like there has been optimal juicy levels in today's conversations, and I know that there'll be, for whoever at home is watching this, that there'll be plenty of moments you may want to listen to this conversation more than once. You may want to listen to some of the segments. The first part, it's almost been beautiful quarters. The first part was sort of the quarter around your cycle. The second part was coming into connecting with your perhaps the moon, and checking in with your body around how things are showing up. So really coming into that embodiment, and then also the ancestral part as to how that can all come in. So allowing yourself the space and time to contemplate some of these things. And as is always the way when you make space, our bodies do lead, don't they? They tell us where they would like us to explore, or to pause, or to dive a bit deeper. And you know, I feel really, really passionate, strongly believe that this is something that when we get quiet, our body will start to lead the way. And even if that leading the way is to a person, a being, to go, actually, can we explore this a little bit further, like making contact with you, Claire. You know, even if logically you're going, I don't understand what any of this is, there'll be a part of you that just go, I need to step forward into this. I'm curious. Something in you will spark. So if people would like to connect further with you, Claire, how can they find you?
So at the moment, on Instagram, I'm the Empowered Feminine, or you can still find me on fertility massage. As you can probably tell, my work is gently moving away from fertility massage. My website is still currently fertilitymassage.co.uk, or you can grab me. You'll find my contact details on there, but my email is info@fertilitymassage.co.uk. So yeah, the Empowered Feminine is currently being birthed, and she'll be ready for you hopefully very soon.
Wonderful, wonderful. So then, my love, all that remains is for me to say thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your truths and your gifts today during our conversation. And thank you from my heart to your heart, and from my womb to your womb, my love. Thank you.
Thank you from my heart to your heart, and my womb to your womb. Thank you for having me on this, and for sharing your wisdom as well. It's been beautiful to do this with you. So thank you.
Much love.
Love.